Habt ihr Bock auf Thrash Metal? Wir sind aus der Bay Area, die legendären, niemals übertroffenen Death Fucking Angel!
My name is Damien. I'm the bass player for Death Angel. I joined Death Angel at the end of 2009, at which they had gone through a moratorium with their bass players. They originally had Dennis Peppa, the original bass player, who's been there since the beginning and a major contributor to the band. And about 2009, he did announce that he could no longer do it for reasons somewhat creative. Anybody who knows Den Peppa knows he is through and through a punk rocker. So at the point at where I began to become familiarized with Death Angel, Den had expressed that he wanted to be more of a punk rock bass player and go in the more punk rock direction. So they went through a moratorium. It's not easy to find a replacement for thrash metal, being that it's somewhat a unique niche to play thrash metal and to play bass in thrash metal. So I come into contact with Death Angel because Ted Aguilar, the guitar player, and I had reformatted a band called Scarecrow. Scarecrow being a band which was me and Will, who are currently in Death Angel, as well as Matt Harvey and Bud Burke from Exhumed. We all came together to make our own band, which was called Scarecrow, which was a tribute to the thrash metal band. Shortly after that point, Death Angel announced that they needed a bass player, so Ted, obviously, having played with me in Scarecrow, put me in for the recommendation. It was during that time they actually went with another bass player for about 6 months, Sammy a.s.o, who was a friend of the band, and in all honesty is more closer to their age realm, so it made more sense for them to try Sammy out as their bass player. But then shortly after, when it came time to record, they realized that they were going to have to make a change, and at that point, Death Angel had called me in. So that was the end of 2009. Essentially, I got a call in October 2009 saying, hey, do you want to go to Eindhoven with us in November? So I said, yeah, I think I'm ready for it. So we did 2 or 3 rehearsals, and I did my first show at the Speedfest in Eindhoven. And that was in 2009. And then shortly after that, March of 2010, which is only 4 months later, we recorded The Relentless Retribution, and I've been there ever since. Yeah, I guess it's important to understand my context within the band. Rob and Mark are both about 13 years older than me, and Will and Ted are about 8 years older than me. So I came from a different time. I came from the 90s, essentially, when in America in particular, metal had taken a bit of a decline and backseat to the grunge movement that was going on, with bands like Alice in Chains, Nirvana, obviously, Soundgarden, and such things. So in the 90s, when it had declined, I'd been raised from a different scene. So when I joined Death Angel, I couldn't say I was thoroughly immersed in the metal scene. I hadn't grown with it. It wasn't my sense of identity when I grew up. But however, through it, I did know bands like Testament. I knew bands like Metallica. I knew of bands like Slayer and Anthrax. Obviously, the Big Four were still notable in the 90s, even if metal was taking a backseat to things like grunge. Since joining Death Angel, many things have changed. I mean, when I grew up, the metal band that got me into metal, and still to this day is my favorite metal band, was and is Metallica. I grew up listening to the first albums I got to when I got into metal were Black Sabbath, was Led Zeppelin, was Deep Purple, but definitely the one that took it to the next level was Metallica. So since I've played with Death Angel, we've done tours with Testament, and so I've done 3 tours with Testament as the opening band. At the same time, I've met all the guys, with Anthrax. Twice Kurt Hammett has asked us to do his Fear Festival, in which case we're, at that point, we've been playing with Kurt Hammett. He came on stage and played with us, and so many of the things that seemed beyond 6 degrees of separation, all of a sudden I became within their fold. I can't really say they came in my fold because it's pre-existing, but with the inclusion of me being in Death Angel, all of a sudden it means I'm playing with bands like Creator, Metallica, Exodus was a big one. Exodus was probably the first time I kind of really realized that I was in a niche scene of thrash metal. Anybody who's familiar with Exodus knows that they're I'd say they're the pioneer band for thrash metal. Metallica maybe for harder metal, but I think Exodus has really defined the genre of thrash metal and continues to define it this day. So Since my inclusion in the Death Angel as bass player, I've met many of the bands who had previously only heard about or seen on TV. And since then, it's now been more of a working and camaraderie relationship. I see many of these guys regularly, and it's not quite as a big a deal as it was when I first met them to say, hey, what's up, ask how's it going, ask how the tour is going, ask how the album's going. And come to find out, most of these guys are pretty normal. Oh man, at any point on the tour, it's comedy. But I think anybody who knows our drummer, Will Carroll, will find him a continuous laughing stock of comedy. And I guess probably anybody who knows Will knows he's equally blind and deaf. So while we're in Spain, I couldn't help but find it hilarious that we're at the breakfast buffet. And if you've ever seen Will, he's got to squint a lot to see stuff. So we're at the breakfast buffet and he's looking at the food and he goes, looks at me and goes, hey Damien, what is this? And he's pointing to fruit and I tell him, hey Will, that's a pineapple. And he goes, oh, well, I don't like pineapples, I don't like pineapples. And then he points to another thing that looks like a tire and he says, well, what's that right there? And I have to look at Will and I go, Will, that's a donut. He's like, oh, well, I like donuts.
Can't you see that to us it's not labor, it's love? Oh, no, they're golden blood!
The tour in Europe and US is really, it's night and day. And well, especially in particular when you come into the EU, when you come to Germany, Germany has a built-in scene for metal, and I'd say even in particularly thrash metal. People here, they love the thrash metal and they understand thrash metal. So when we come and we play what we're playing, right away, they understand the music and they thrive on it, they live on it, and so that feeds us back as a band. When we see people in Germany and we play here and they're going crazy and they're mosh pitting and they know the lyrics and they're clapping their hands, it becomes synergistic, and then we start to enjoy it as well, and we have we get into our performance even more and more. In America, it's really a grind. There's no two ways about it. When we're in America, we have to work for every little piece of anything we get, and there aren't the basic common necessities that you get in Germany. We get catering. We have food. We get taken care of, our hospitality. In America, we might not get any food for a whole tour, and we have to pay for our own food. I'm not complaining about getting our own food, but it's definitely allows us to appreciate and be grateful that when we're in Germany, when we're in Austria, when we're in Switzerland, when we have a chef at the venue who's making food for us. That's the big difference. Furthermore, like I was saying, in America in the 90s, there was a decline of metal, and I wasn't in Europe at the time, I wasn't in Germany at the time of the 90s, but I don't know if they suffered the same decline of exposure that America did. And in the 90s, metal wasn't so much that it wasn't even the new sensation anymore, as much as I think to many people, many up-and-coming people, they found it embarrassing to identify with the metal of the 80s. So in the 90s, it took a step back. And so in taking a step back, it kind of filters out who were maybe sitting on the fence about being metal in the first place, whereas in Germany, there's a true identity of who is metal and who is not. There's people who like metal and who have liked metal their whole lives, whereas in America, you might hear, yeah, you know, I really liked metal in the 80s, but then I grew up. Or, you know, it was really cool at one time, but I just don't identify with it anymore. And I think in Europe you see that it's much more of a lifestyle and perhaps even part of the subculture. In America, it was a fad that came and went and came back again. So I think that's really one of the biggest differences that I see. All right, so as far as the gear in Death Angel, the bass, what I play is I'm either going to be playing a Fender jazz bass, the Geddy Lee model, which is a Japanese issue, but it plays fantastically, or a Rickenbacker. I'm either going to go back and forth between those two basses, and the reason is really quite simple. I fucking love Geddy Lee, so anything Geddy Lee touches, I'm going to try to emulate. He's got the Fender jazz bass, he's got the Rickenbacker. Those are the two that I want.
Get to hold a bass!
As far as amplification, my amplification has been and is still and will probably always be Ampeg. So I play either the Ampeg SVT4 or the Ampeg SVT7. So yeah, when it comes to the bass, it's going to be exclusively a 4-string, and it's simple enough. Paul McCartney plays a 4-string bass. Geddy Lee plays a 4-string bass. Geezer Butler plays the 4-string bass. John Paul Jones plays the 4-string bass. All the best bass players, all defining bass players have always played the 4-string bass. The 5-string's not necessary. If I was in a band like Fear Factory and you're tuned down low or Meshuggah, it makes sense, but we're playing thrash metal. It's an extension of rock and roll. It's sped up with more energy and more spunk. I don't need 5 and 6 and 7-string basses to do what I need to do. So I play the 4-string bass exclusively and always. I'm pretty strict about playing D'Addario strings and Planet Waves cables. Both D'Addario and Planet Waves accessories are the best for me. Not the best for everybody, but they serve what I do very well. I always like working with them, and the products are good. Additionally, I also I prefer Seymour Duncan pickups. So of the stuff I use, the Seymour Duncan, Planet Waves, D'Addario, Ampeg. And for hardware, which I think is an overlooked thing in music, I really outfit all my basses with Hipshot hardware. Hipshot make they make the bridges, they make tuning pegs, and they have the extending tuning peg. The extender tuning peg really happens to work really well because Death Angel plays in 2 different tunings, both being a drop tuning and standard tuning. So for me, rather than having to bring 4 and 5 basses on a tour to accommodate the different tunings, I just bring one bass, I can drop it down, I don't have to go to the side of the stage, I don't have to change my tunings, I drop my tuning peg down, I bring it back up, I go from drop tunings back up to standard tunings, and that's the gear I essentially use. I don't really believe that what we do, being thrash metal, I don't really feel like I need a chorus pedal or a special extra effects. And in effect, I'm a bass player, so I'm part of the rhythm section. I really need to be creating the best, most movable movement for the rhythm section. So having specialized effects for basses and thrash metal, it's superfluous to what my job is there. My job is really to support the drums, flesh out the melody, and solidify the rhythm of the guitar. And so, you know, I see some of these guys who have the big bass floorboard, and that might be nice if I was playing jazz or if this was a bass-oriented band, but I'm not playing in that, so I don't really find that stuff to really be necessary. I like to try to keep it simple, keep it direct. Ultimately, we entertain a high-energy show, so the more effects I have, the more cables I have, the more things that could potentially go wrong. If anything goes wrong on bass, the bottom falls out, the bedrock's gone, the music sounds different. So I want to make sure, for the purposes of troubleshooting, that my bass is going to be solid the whole set. So I go for a very simple and direct setup. No pedals, no extra amplifiers, just straight in through the Ampeg 810 cabinet, through an SVT4. The sound you're getting is my fingers, my pickups, and my strings, and that's about it.